I have two fixed points, S1 and S2, and we say that the point moves in such a manner that the distance of this point from these two fixed points, यही करते हैं ना, PS1 plus PS2, यही मानकर चलते हैं ना, the distance between these two fixed points is always constant. We take this constant as 2a, and there is one more condition, not just that this is constant, there is one more condition, that this sum is always greater than the distance between the two fixed points. ये भी तो मानकर चलते हैं कि इनके बीच में जो distance है, this sum of the distance between the point and the two fixed points is always greater than this. This is the basic difference between ellipse and hyperbola. In hyperbola, this sum is less than S1, S2, and in ellipse, this sum is greater than S1, S2. That's how we define an ellipse. Okay, and we have seen that, and of course, this is the center. Okay, which for now will be taking as 0, 0. But the thing is that my ellipse can be this, or my ellipse can be this also. Sorry, I'm sorry. In fact, you know, this distance, this axis on which the two fixed points lie, this is called as the major axis, and the axis perpendicular to the major axis is called as the minor axis. यही बोलते हैं ना? So your major, that means your major axis can be x-axis, but like in this case, the fixed points are here. Okay, this is your S1 and this is your S2. So that means your major axis can be the x-axis, your major axis can be the y-axis also. So that is why we say that a general equation of an ellipse is something like this. Okay, x square by a square plus y square by b square equal to 1. And not just this, if I assume there is one more constant term here, if I say let this distance from origin to one fixed point be C. So definitely that means I'm assuming that OS1 is C. So obviously this has to be equal to OS2 also, because they are equidistant from the origin. And we have this condition, we have this relation. I'm not going into the details of this proof, but we have this condition that C square is equal to A square minus B square, where B is this distance, the endpoints of the minor axis. यही मानकर यही होता है ना, the endpoints of the major axis are A0 and minus A0, and the endpoints of the minor axis are 0B and 0 minus B. And if C is the distance between the focus, these are the two foci, S1 and S2. So C is basically the midpoint, the distance between the origin and one of the focus. Then this is the relationship between A, B, and C. So obviously, when we are going to sketch a conic, we have to first of all identify whether the x-axis is the major axis or y-axis is the major axis, right? So and for that, the standard rule is that if in your equation A square is greater than B square, then x-axis is the major axis. This is how I mean, this is something, I'm just repeating what you already know, right? So if A square is greater than B square, then x-axis is the major axis. And if A square is less than B square, then y-axis is the major axis. This is what we need to do. So in fact, you know, tracing ellipse is probably the easiest part because we don't have to do anything. So what we do is we first of all identify the axis here. Then say supposing I have to sketch x squared by 16 plus y squared by 9 equal to 1. Okay, this is an ellipse that we need to sketch. So in this case, my A square is 16 and my B square is 9. And since A square is greater than B square, that means x-axis is the major axis. Okay. So if a square is 16, that means a is plus minus 4, and that we know because that is going to define the endpoints of the major axis. Similarly, b is going to be plus minus 3, which is going to define the endpoints of the minor axis, right? So once you have obtained your a and b, kuch nahi karna. On your, these are going to be your coordinate axis. So what we are going to do is we are going to construct a box now. Kaisa? 4 units along the major axis. That means a units along the major axis on both the sides. Okay, so that automatically this point will be what? 40, and this point will be what? Minus 40, right? Similarly, b units up and down the minor axis. And how much is your b? This and 3. So that means this point will be 0, 3, and this point will be 0, minus 3. Now we construct a box here, something like this, and here also, and here also. So your ellipse is going to lie on this. So now you just construct your ellipse, क्योंकि ये end points हैं, तो in points को तो touch करेगा, and now you can join them with a freehand, something like this. So this will be your ellipse. Is this okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, but similarly, say supposing you were to sketch x square by 4 plus y square by 25 equal to 1. अब इसमें मेजर एक्सेस कौन सा होगा?
y-axis.
ठीक है ना? So that means we'll go and because my b is 5 and my a is 2, so we go 5 units up and down, 2 units left and right, and complete the box and draw an ellipse. Not a big deal. That's what I said. Ellipse is the easiest probably to sketch. कर लोगे अपने आप?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
But now say supposing you have something like, अब हमें sketch नहीं करना, but we have to find the equation of an ellipse such that, I don't know which question is it, but I'm just writing. Find the ellipse whose, I say, ends of major axis are plus minus 30 and ends of minor axis are 0 plus minus 2. Again, this is not tough. ठीक है ना? अब उसने कह ही दिया major axis is plus minus 30. Now plus minus 30 are the 2 points. Where would they lie? X axis या Y axis? X axis. तो एक यहाँ पे, एक यहाँ पे, ठीक है ना? And minor axis में plus minus 2. So if end points are plus minus 3, that means your A is 3. Because major axis A देगा, ठीक है ना? Similarly, here B is 2. So what will be the equation of an ellipse? X square by 9
Plus
y square by
4 equal to 1.
ठीक है ना? अब इसमें तो कोई problem नहीं आई. But say supposing you are to find an equation, find an ellipse, or say we find the ellipse whose length of major axis is 26 and foci are plus minus 50. ठीक है? अब ये हमें निकालना है कि हमें लेंथ ऑफ मेजर एक्सिस दिया हुआ है और फोकस, दोनों फोकस के हमें कोऑर्डिनेट्स दिए हुए हैं, राइट? नाउ wherever your foci are lying, that defines your major axis.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
अब जो हमारे फोकाई के कोऑर्डिनेट्स हैं वो कैसे हैं? X coordinate 0. So that means both my foci lie on which axis?
x-axis.
That means my x-axis is my major axis.
Yes, ma'am.
ठीक है. अब ये देखो, इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? If अभी मैंने b नहीं निकाला, हमें और कुछ नहीं दिया हुआ, माइनर एक्सिस के बारे में कुछ नहीं दिया हुआ, but then we have to use it somewhere, right? So that means 5 units here and 5 units here. This point is going to be 50 and this point is going to be minus 50. So basically this is my S1 and this is my S2. These are the two foci, right? But I am also given that the length of the major axis is 26, right? Now major axis extends A units on one side and A units on the other side.
Yes, ma'am.
So basically, what does it mean? That my 2A, length of the major axis is 2A is 26. So that means
is equal to 30.
ठीक है ना? तो इसका मतलब यहाँ पे कोई एक पॉइंट है 13 0 and यहाँ पे दूसरा पॉइंट है minus 13 0, which is going to be the end points of my major axis, right? Also, we observe, जब हमने पहले बताया था, then the distance between the origin and the focus is how many units? C.
MC.
C units on both the sides, because the distance between the two foci is 2C, right? So half of it will be C units. Now, this C extends to how many units on both the sides? 5 units. So that means my C is 5. Now I am given A, I am given C. Can I not now find B? Because I have a relation between A, B and C. See, as far as major axis was concerned, this is fine. We were given, but I don't know how much will it extend on the vertical axis. तभी तो हम ellipse की equation निकाल पाएंगे. A तो निकल आया 13, not a big deal, right? But I need to find my B as well, right? Now use the relationship between A, B and C. क्या है हमारे पास? C square.
C square A square is equal to A square minus B square.
C square is equal to A square minus B square. Now you know C, you know A. Can you not find your B square?
Then B is equal to 12.
B is
Plus
equal
minus
to
12, ma'am.
Actually, B square is 144, right? So
Yes.
B is plus minus 12. So that means we have to extend 12 units up and 12 units down for the endpoints of the minor axis. Is it okay? Now, your A square is B square is 144. So definitely it shows that your x-axis is the major axis. वो तो दिया ही हुआ है. So can you not write the equation of the ellipse now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Square by
169.
x square by
9 plus y square
y
upon
square by 144 equal to 1. Is this okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, in a similar manner, we have the hyperbolas with us. अब hyperbola में क्या होता है? होता तो ये भी locus ही है, right? But then, अब hyperbola देखो ऐसे ही बनता है ना. अगर हम एक general hyperbola अपना देखें, this is the origin. तो it has two branches, something like this, and these are the two asymptotes. यही आता है ना हमारे पास. Now, somewhere here, if okay, I'm coming in. That means there are two axes for a hyperbola. यही बोलते हैं ना. इस axis को हम क्या बोलते हैं? Focal axis, on which the two foci lie, and the axis perpendicular to the focal axis is called as what? Conjugate axis. यही बोलते थे.
Yes, ma'am.
And this hyperbola has got two asymptotes that pass through the origin, and these two lines are perpendicular to each other, number one. And this is the center of the hyperbola, okay, O. And we say locus, P मानकर चलते हैं ना, locus of a point P, such that, what do we have? अब ये बड़ा हो जाता है ना distance. So in this case, we don't have a sum. We have PS1 minus PS2 is 2A. which is always less than S1, S2. यही बोलते हैं, ठीक है? And what is A? A is the distance between the center and the vertex. ये distance A units होता है from the center to both the vertices, and from center to one of the focus, again this distance is C units. यहाँ से लेके यहाँ तक. This distance is always C units. ठीक है? So that is why we have the coordinates of the two focus are C0 and minus C0. Okay. Then what we do is, yeah, okay. And the general equation of a parabola क्या होती है? It is
X
now
square upon A square minus Y square upon
X
B.
square upon A square minus Y square by B square is equal to 1. नहीं होती है ना?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, in this case, in case of, see, I can have a hyperbola like this, जो हमने बनाया अभी. I can have a hyperbola like this also. ये भी तो hyperbola है. I
Yes,
have
ma'am.
asymptotes like this. अब इसमें क्या हो गया? इसमें my y-axis is the focal axis and
Yes, ma'am.
x-axis is the conjugate axis. ठीक है ना? So that means given the equation, that means I can have an equation of a hyperbola like this, or I can have an equation like इसको हम ऐसे भी तो लिख सकते हैं y square
Upon B, A is B
a
square.
square कह लो, b square कह लो, चलो y square upon b square minus x square upon a square equal to 1. ऐसे भी तो लिख सकते हैं, ठीक है ना?
Yes.
So for this hyperbola, this is the kind of an equation that we are going to get. So that means in this case, like in ellipse, we first of all identify what is the major axis and what is the minor axis. In a similar manner for hyperbola, we are going to first of all identify which equation is my focal axis and which equation is my conjugate axis. Okay. So if we have the term containing y square is with a negative sign, then x-axis is the focal axis. यही होता है ना?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? And if x square is with the negative sign, then y-axis is the focal axis. Is that right? Now what we do is we find A and B. Actually, इसको भी हम instead of writing this only, because हमको A units focal axis पे चलना होता है और B units conjugate axis पे. तो इसलिए इसको भी ना, instead of writing it as y square by b square, we'll write it as y square by a square minus x square by b square equal to 1. Right?
Yes.
So that our A units is always along the focal axis and B units is always along the conjugate axis. Okay? So same thing we are going to do here. Once we have identified our axis, which one is focal and which one is conjugate, the next thing we do is we find our corresponding A's and B's. This is the next step. Okay? So what we do is we draw a box. Okay? अब ये box तो बहुत ही काम की चीज हो जाती है इसमें. Extending A units on both the sides of the center, along the focal axis. Okay, so if your focal axis is x-axis, we do it on the x-axis, otherwise we do it on the y-axis. Okay, A units on both the sides of the center along the focal axis and B units on both the sides along the conjugate axis. Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So once you have completed your box, Now the box will help you sketch the hyperbola. Kaise? Like for example, say supposing we have to sketch x square by 16 minus y square by 4 equal to 1. Okay. Now since my y square term is with the negative sign, so that means x-axis is the focal axis
Yes, ma'am. And y-axis is the conjugate.
and y-axis is the conjugate axis. Okay. Second thing I see is that therefore my A is 4, B is 2. Actually plus minus, but then plus minus here mean along the two sides of along the 2 points on the x-axis, one towards the positive and one towards the negative. Okay. So what we are going to do now is we have to sketch a box. I mean, construct a box. Kaise? See, now this is going to be my axis, right? Both the axis x and the y-axis. So we extend A units along the focal axis, which is my x-axis. So I have a coordinate here 4, 0, and I have a coordinate here minus 4, 0. And we extend B units along the conjugate axis. तो ये पॉइंट आ गया 0, 2 और ये पॉइंट आ गया 0, -2. ठीक है ना? अब हमने यहाँ पे एक बॉक्स बना दिया, जैसे हम पैराबोला, हर चाहे पैराबोला बनाया था चाहे एलिप्स, even in hyperbola now we have a box. Okay, now once this box is complete, what we can do is the diagonals of this box, the two diagonals, अब ये तो rectangle बन गया ना एक हमारे पास, ठीक है? So we have two diagonals here. One will extend. Let me clarify the diagonals. So one diagonal will be this line. ये मैंने दो diagonals plot करेंगे, ठीक है? And the other diagonal will be this line. So obviously the two diagonals are perpendicular to each other, right? So these two diagonals, they will define my asymptotes, okay? And they will tell you how the parabola is going to become parallel or how is it going to extend. And the two endpoints of the focal axis are going to define my vertices of the two branches. Yahi ho raha na? That means my one branch of the parabola, hyperbola, is going to come parallel from here, parallel to this axis, this line, cut the x-axis at 4, 0, and then move parallel to the other side. Similarly, this branch will come like this and behave like this. So this becomes your hyperbola. The two asymptotes actually help you define how the hyperbola is going to behave. Behave in the sense, how wide is it going to be? Okay, and it all depends upon how we have constructed this box. Agar instead of 4, यहाँ पे 3 पे point होता, तो you will see that these lines will become more wider at the ends. So you will have a broader hyperbola, a broader branch from here. Okay, so this is how we sketch a hyperbola. Is it clear? Isn't it easy?
Yes, ma'am. Box big.
Yes, ma'am.
So similarly, if you have say अब ये खुद sketch करने की कोशिश करो तो y square by 9 minus x square by 25 equal to 1. अब इस केस में क्या हो गया? x square की टर्म नेगेटिव है, so that means your y square is the focal axis. ठीक है ना? And x-axis is your conjugate axis. ठीक है? हो जाएगा?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Done.
Done? So this is easy, right? But then, as I was saying the other day, every time we cannot be having these standard conics, you know. I mean, I can have, you know, where the center is not necessarily the origin for an ellipse. Like if I can have an ellipse like this, ये भी तो ellipse है, इसका center तो ये वाला point हो गया. Some point say AB, or say AB नहीं कहते, some point say HK, because AB हमारे axis में आ जाते हैं. So I can have an ellipse with center HK, but it's not 0, 0 here, right? Or I can have again an ellipse HK, but something like this. इसमें भी तो center change हो गया. In fact, जो हमारी मेजर और माइनर एक्सिस हैं वो भी डिफरेंट हो गए. इसमें फिर भी मेजर और माइनर एक्सिस पैरेलल तो हैं कोऑर्डिनेट एक्सिस के साथ. ठीक है, इसका मतलब वी हैव टू कंसिडर दीज टू सिचुएशंस आल्सो. अब नॉट जस्ट दिस, अभी तक हमने क्या करा कि हमारे जो हमने चाहे सी, we have three standard curves. We are talking of parabola, we are talking of an ellipse, and we are talking of a hyperbola. ठीक है, अब ellipse के केस में I can end up with these two situations, in the sense I can have a situation where my major and minor axes are parallel to the coordinate axis, and here my major and minor axes are not parallel, they are inclined to the coordinate axis at some angle. ये difference आ गया ना दोनों में. If this is my x-axis, this is my y-axis, here also this is my x-axis, this is my y-axis. So ये वाली major axis जो है, this is inclined, you know, with x-axis at some angle. The minor axis is inclined with y-axis at some angle. तो इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? This situation is to be handled in a different manner. This situation has to be handled in a different manner. Same could be in the case of a parabola. Like in case of this case, where my axis become parallel to the coordinate axis, I have a parabola here. Or I can have a parabola here. Or I can have a parabola here. But what about this case when I have a parabola like this? So here still the axis is parallel to x-axis, but here the axis is not parallel to x-axis, it is inclined. Same can happen with the hyperbola also. No, I can have a hyperbola somewhere here. यहाँ पे फिर भी हमारे axis parallel है coordinate axis के, but I can also have a hyperbola like this. अब यहाँ पे तो हमारे axis फिर inclined हो गए at an angle, right? So that means we have to handle these cases separately. I mean, cases where the axes are not the coordinate axis, but they happen to be parallel to the coordinate axis. अब इस केस में तो बहुत आसान हो जाती हैं चीजें. क्यों? Because इसमें हमें और कुछ नहीं करना. अगर हम अपना एक्सेस ही तो शिफ्ट कर रहे हैं. अगर जैसे मेरे को ये एलिप्स ट्रेस करना था, तो अगर मैं अपना कोऑर्डिनेट सिस्टम, आई मीन सेंटर को 0, 0 ना मानकर एक नया कोऑर्डिनेट सिस्टम ऑफ एक्सेस डिफाइन कर दूं जहां पे सेंटर एच के है, दिस वी कैन डू. वी कैन ऑलवेज शिफ्ट द ओरिजिन फ्रॉम 0, 0 टू एच के by doing what? By replacing x and replacing y by certain quantities, and nothing will change. So what will happen? ये पूरे का पूरा rectangular plane जो है मेरा उठ के कहाँ चला जाएगा? एच के पे. और जो काम 0, 0 कर रहा था xy प्लेन में, इसका मतलब मैंने एक नया x कोऑर्डिनेट सिस्टम डिफाइन कर दिया एज कैपिटल X and capital Y, where we replace x by x minus h and y by y minus k. यही करते हैं ना हम जब हम origin shift करते हैं तो. So what will happen? I have a new coordinate, तो इसलिए मैं उसको बार बार capital X capital Y ना कह के I'll simply replace this, and I have a new coordinate system in which HK will do the job of 0, 0. और तो कुछ भी नहीं कर रहे, right? And so as a result, what will happen? तो जो हमने rules बनाए थे अभी तक sketch करने के लिए, the same rules will follow. but it's just that my equations will get changed in the sense that कि जैसे जो हमारे पास इक्वेशन हुआ करती थी y square equal to 4px, इस तरह की इक्वेशन थी, that will now become y minus k whole square equal to 4p into x minus h, because हमने x को x minus h से replace करा और y को y minus k से. Similarly, x square equal to 4py will now be x minus h whole square equal to 4p into y minus k. Is this okay or not?
Yes, ma'am.
ठीक है.
Yes, ma'am.
And accordingly अब तुम्हारे पास अब you just have to identify कि बाकी रूल तो वही का वही रहेगा in the sense कि if it's with a plus sign it will open on the right, if it is with a negative sign it will open on the left, open up, open down depending upon whether you have a plus sign or you have a minus sign. तो हमारे पास accordingly equations of parabola आ जाएंगी. Like I can have this equation as y minus k whole square equal to minus 4p into x minus h, and here I can have something like x minus h whole square equal to minus 4p into y minus k. So I have a parabola opening right, I have a parabola opening left, up, down. The equations remain the same. Baki rule to wahi ka wahi rahega, right? So what we do is we first of all try to reduce the given equation in this form and then identify where my center lies, and accordingly from that center we draw a box जैसे हमने पहले parabola में किया था, and then construct the parabola accordingly. Is that okay? I just
Yes.
wanted to see if I have an example, something like this. So yeah, so what we basically have to do is just, you know, complete the squares. और कुछ नहीं करना है इसमें. Just let me. Same will go for the parabola. Yeah, हाँ बोलो बेटा.
मैम हम सब ये इसलिए पढ़ते हैं जिससे हम कहीं पर भी सिमेट्री डिफाइन कर पाए ना.
एक मिनट क्या मतलब, मैं समझी नहीं.
मैम जैसे अगर हमें कोई फिगर बनाना है तो मैम हम इन सब चीजों की हेल्प से एकदम सिमेट्रिकल चीजें बना सकते हैं, हम लोग इसलिए इसको पढ़ते हैं ना.
हाँ वो भी है, एंड प्लस एट टाइम्स ये मतलब because these are certain standard curves, and once we what we basically understand from here is that for sketching certain standard curves we don't need much information about them. Just by looking at the equation and how they are going to behave we can just sketch them. हमें और कुछ नहीं चाहिए इसको बनाने के लिए. So in fact, you know, like if you see, so I don't know. I think I'll share something with you. I don't know whether I have it or not. But you know, using different equations on your xy plane only. मतलब आप सिर्फ डोमेन डिफाइन कर दो कि मतलब मेरे को से 0 से 3 के लिए सिर्फ एक एलिप्स का पार्ट चाहिए, राइट? फिर 3 से ऑनवर्ड्स मुझे कोई और कर्व का पार्ट चाहिए. इस तरह से स्टैंडर्ड कर्व्स को कलेक्ट करके यू नो वी कैन कंस्ट्रक्ट ब्यूटीफुल शेप्स. दिस इज हाउ कंप्यूटर ग्राफिक्स वर्क. I mean, when you are drawing, when things are being plotted in the back end, यही चीजें तो चल रही हैं. मतलब जैसे आपको अगर मान लो कोई एक फ्लावर ही बनाना है, ठीक है, अब अगर मेरे को पता है कि किस एक्सिस में कैसा पेटल चाहिए, तो जैसे हमने पोलर कर्व्स में किया, अब नॉट नेसेसरली दोस पेटल्स, वी नीड डिफरेंट काइंड ऑफ शेप्स समवेयर. आई नीड टू कंस्ट्रक्ट अ हट, ठीक है. तो अब मेरे को अगर ग्राफिक में उसको कहीं ना कहीं लेके जाना है, तो एक जगह ट्रायंगल बन रहा है, एक जगह रेक्टेंगल बन रहा है, एक जगह मुझे विंडोज की एलिप्टिकल देनी है, तो मैं हर एक मेरा जो डोमेन है वो तो मेरे एक्स वाई प्लेन पे ही कहीं ना कहीं बन रहा है ना. So this is how your three-dimensional printers work. This is how your computer graphics in the back end work. You have well-defined equations for them.
कोविड की रिपोर्ट्स पैराबोला में आ रही थी कि ऐसे बढ़ रहा है।
नॉट एग्जैक्टली, दे पैराबोला एग्जैक्टली वैसा नहीं आता, वो थोड़ा नॉर्मल कर्व को हम मानकर चलते हैं, बिकॉज दिस हैज अ पीक, then it falls down, then it has a peak, then it falls down. But then the peaks, it's not a proper sine wave, क्योंकि कभी peak ऊपर जा रही है, कभी नीचे जा रही है. Gradually it should flatten out. So that's how a virus should behave. But ऐसा हो नहीं रहा, इसके साथ हो नहीं रहा है ऐसे. In fact, when we have a natural virus, चाहे वो इबोला ही है या जो भी कोई और ले लो, तो भी, so what happens is that it is, see, virus is nothing but a protein, you know, so it's an RNA, it's not a DNA, so it needs some surface to grow and some surface to multiply, and when it multiplies it mutates, उसकी protein की sequence change होती रहती है. So when you have a virus, normally when it has mutated so many times, it dies, it weakens, वो अपने आप ही खत्म हो जाता है. So that's why we say for every pandemic which is due to a virus, it weaken हो सकता है, बिल्कुल खत्म नहीं होगा, क्योंकि कभी ना कभी फिर कोई ना कोई उसका म्यूटेटेड स्ट्रेन ऐसा आएगा जो इफेक्ट करेगा. इसीलिए even if you see a common flu is also a viral infection, right? तो किसी सीजन में फ्लू की वैक्सीन बहुत अच्छी काम करती है, किसी सीजन में नहीं करती है. That is because if you can have a vaccine only for a limited number of strains. You cannot have a vaccine for every strain that it is mutating into. तो अब अगर बाय चांस अगर किसी स्ट्रेन, उस साल कोई एक ऐसा स्ट्रेन आ गया जिसपे वो वायरस, जिसपे वो वैक्सीन इफेक्टिव है, उस साल वो इफेक्टिव होती है, नहीं तो नहीं होती. इन्फ्लुएंजा की वैक्सीन है, या even chicken pox is a virus. But then we have now, कितने सालों बाद we now have vaccines that has weakened the strain so much कि अगर अब chicken pox होता भी है तो it is so mild and it is not fatal. But अब देखो, this virus तो has just started. So अब जैसे जैसे आगे बढ़ेंगे, जैसे जैसे vaccines लगेंगी, we'll have more data, we will be able to analyze it better with time. Yes, it will happen. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
तो आगे चलें.
Yes, ma'am.
So as I was saying, say supposing you have an equation, something like, you have to now sketch x square minus 4x plus 2y equal to 1. ठीक है. अब सबसे पहले तो क्या होता है कि इक्वेशन ही बता देगी what kind of a curve is it going to be. Why? Because in our standard equations also, my parabola has been something like this, either y square equal to 4px or x square equal to 4py. That means we do not have an equation with terms like x square and y square both together. ठीक है ना? That happens only in the case of ellipse or a hyperbola, where you have terms containing x square as well as y square with you, right? So in this equation, I just have one term containing x square. There is no y square present. So definitely this represents a parabola. Is it okay? Right? So, and definitely since I have x square, so my parabola is going to be something like this. X square equal to 4py. इसी type का बनेगा, right? So what we do is, because that means my equation has to be either of these two, x minus h whole square and x minus h whole square equal to minus 4p or plus 4p, depending upon where it is going to open, up or down. So what we do is, given this kind of an equation, the very first thing we try to do is complete the squares so that we can reduce our given equation into something in the standard form. Okay, so when you have to complete the squares, what I can see from here is I can write it as x minus 2 whole square. x square minus 4x की terms को अगर मैं combine करने की कोशिश करूं तो I'll have terms like this. ठीक है? So
Yes, ma'am.
what happens? X square taken care minus 4x taken care. Now what do I have extra from this term? Plus 4, right?
Minus
So I
4.
subtract minus 4. यही तो extra था, उसको मैंने
ma'am.
subtract कर दिया. So that means these two terms have been taken care. Now what are the other two terms left? Plus 2y minus 1 equal to 0. ठीक है? Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Now, one thing is clear that my h is 2 because मेरी equation कैसी आ गई? X minus 2 whole square. Now I can write it as minus 2y plus 5.
Yes, ma'am.
ठीक है, क्योंकि अब मेरे को अब जो मेरी स्टैंडर्ड इक्वेशन है वो ऐसी आ रही है ना, x माइनस एच होल स्क्वायर 4p इंटू वाई माइनस के और माइनस 4p इंटू वाई माइनस के. तो इसी से तो कंपेयर करनी है, तभी तो मेरे को p मिलेगा जैसे हमने पहले ट्रेस किया था. सो व्हाट आई डू इज आई राइट इट एज माइनस, अच्छा अगर मैं इसको ऐसे लिखूं माइनस 2 इंटू व्हाट एम आई लेफ्ट विथ y माइनस 5/2.
Yes, ma'am.
ठीक है ना, मेरे को y माइनस के चाहिए था ना. ठीक है, तो मैंने माइनस 2 कॉमन लेके y माइनस 5/2 लिख दिया. ठीक है, सो बेसिकली इफ आई कंपेयर माई इक्वेशन with this second equation, अब हमारी स्टैंडर्ड इक्वेशन क्या है? x माइनस एच होल स्क्वायर इक्वल टू माइनस 4p इंटू वाई माइनस के. Is it okay? That means
Yes.
my h is 2 and my k is 5/2.
Ma'am.
Right? तो that means अब मैंने अपना सेंटर 0 0 से उठा के कहाँ पे शिफ्ट कर दिया? 2 5/2 पे. ठीक है, अब 2, 5/2 पॉइंट जो हुआ वो कहाँ पे हुआ? कहीं ना कहीं फर्स्ट क्वाड्रेंट में.
मैम 4p की फॉर्म में नहीं लेंगे इसको?
लेंगे, बिल्कुल लेंगे. बॉक्स तो बनाने के लिए पी चाहिए हमें. अभी तो पहले हम अपना सेंटर तो आइडेंटिफाई कर लें.
बट मैम 4 अगर करेंगे इंसर्ट तो वो चेंज नहीं होगा अंदर का?
अंदर का क्यों चेंज होगा? मेरे को तो 4p, जब तुम इक्वेशन ये वाली लेते थे x स्क्वायर इक्वल टू 4p/, तो इसी कोफिशिएंट को ही तो कंपेयर करते थे ना 4p से.
ओके मैम.
यहीं से तो हम p निकालेंगे.
Yes, ma'am.
ठीक है, तो अभी तो मैं अपनी इक्वेशन इस तरह में लिख रही हूँ. ऑब्वियसली फ्रॉम हियर इट इज क्लियर दैट माय 4p इज 2. तो यहां से तो मेरे को p मिलेगा ना. यहां तो y माइनस के चाहिए ना मुझे. इज इट ओके और नॉट?
यस मैम, आई गॉट इट नाउ.
ठीक है, सो अब उस केस में अब जब हमारी स्टैंडर्ड इक्वेशन थी पैराबोला की, तो हमारा ओरिजिन क्या होता था? वर्टेक्स. ठीक है, सो डेफिनेटली इस केस में पैराबोला में मेरा वर्टेक्स बन गया क्या? 2 5/2. इज इट ओके? अब
Yes, ma'am.
अभी मैं यहाँ बना रही हूँ 2 5/2 मतलब सम पॉइंट समवेयर हियर. ये पॉइंट है ना 2 5/2. This point has coordinates 2 5/2. Right? Now see, my equation of the parabola is x square equal to minus something into y. And how does this parabola open? Where does this open? This parabola is going to open where? Left, right, up, down.
Ma'am, left.
Ma'am, down.
It's x square equal to something into y. And
Ma'am,
that
down.
is, so it's going to
Down.
open down. तो इसका मतलब बनेगा तो ऐसे ऊपर से नीचे, यहां समवेयर समथिंग लाइक दिस. बट नाउ कितना खुलेगा? फॉर दैट आई नीड माई p. बॉक्स बनाना है. सो फॉर p कंपेयर दीज थिंग्स. सो फ्रॉम हियर यू हैव 4p इक्वल टू 2. That means how
equal
much
to
is
1/2.
is equal to half. ठीक है ना? तो अब कैसे बनेंगे हम? बॉक्स यहां से बनाना है. इट्स लाइक अब एक तरह से इसको ऐसे मान लो कि ये तुम्हारा एक्सेस बन गए अब. ठीक है? अब ये 0 0 हो गया तुम्हारा. जो काम ओरिजिन कर रहा था वो काम अब ये वाला पॉइंट कर रहा है. तो अब हम कहां करेंगे? P यूनिट्स डाउन एंड 2P यूनिट्स लेफ्ट एंड राइट. ऐसे ही तो बॉक्स बनाएंगे. And then you have your parabola, something like this. Is it okay or not?
Yes, ma'am.
अब सिमिलरली, अब अगर एलिप्स, हाइपरबोला भी तो फिर इसी तरह से बन जाएंगे. हमको सिर्फ अपना सेंटर ही तो चेंज करना है एलिप्स और हाइपरबोला के केस में. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल, सपोजिंग यू हैव x स्क्वायर प्लस 9y स्क्वायर प्लस 2x माइनस 18y प्लस 1 इक्वल टू 0. क्लास का टाइम हो गया वैसे. अभी तुम्हारी लैब है?
यस मैम.
यस मैम.
चलो फिर ये प्रॉब्लम्स फिर ट्यूसडे को करते हैं. ठीक है? अदरवाइज ट्राई दिस योरसेल्फ.
ओके मैम.
ठीक है? इन द सेंस, अब देखो इसमें x स्क्वायर और y स्क्वायर दोनों है. So it's going to be either an ellipse or a hyperbola. Right? So try to reduce it something like this: x minus h by whole square by a square. Either it will be this kind or it will be with a negative sign in between. तो complete, हमको ultimately given equation में squares ही complete करने हैं. Okay? इसको ट्राई करना अगर हो जाए इस वाले क्वेश्चन को तो. ठीक है? फिर बाकी ट्यूसडे करते हैं काम.
ओके मैम.
चलो.
ओके मैम.
Thank you,
थैंक
ma'am.
यू मैम. ओके मैम.
ओके गर्ल्स, बाय.
मैम
हाँ जी, बोलो बेटा.
मैम आज रितिका मैम क्लास लेंगी क्योंकि आज पाइथन